Hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. Today's discussion, we're going to be tackling top priorities in the B2B space for companies in Australia and New Zealand. And we're going to delve into some hands-on strategies to help you thrive. But before we dive in, I want to take a moment to recognize the traditional custodians of the land where we gather today. I'd like to pay my respects to their elders, both past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today joining us. Now, I'm also going to hand across to Gabrielle in New Zealand, who will provide the welcome to country there.
Thank you. Tu taua mai I runga, tu taua mai I raro, tu taua mai I waho, tu tara mai I roto, kia tau I te Māori tū, te Māori ora, ki te katoa, home e, hui e, taike e.
Thanks, Gav. And while we've got you, we'll have you talk about the forward statement, as we always do.
Yeah. So this is a common feature in all presentations or things that Salesforce participate in, and it basically says in a nutshell that we are a publicly listed company. So please make any purchasing decisions on what is currently in our generally available in our product set.
Awesome. Thanks, Gab. Now, we've got a fantastic panel today to share their insights. Hi, I'm Toby, again, from Cloudworks, and it's great to have Richard Wilshire, the CIO at Australian Computer Society, and Gabrielle O'Brien, who brings extensive experience working with mid-market organizations at Salesforce on our panel today. Now, bit of housekeeping. We're going to have a Q&A at the end of the session, so please make sure you use the Q&A buttons at the bottom of the screen to ask your questions. And before we dive in, I'd love to do some introductions. So Richard, do you mind giving us a whistle-stop tour of yourself and ACS?
Thanks, Toby. Yeah, I am the CIO for the Australian Computer Society. We've embarked on a digital transformation, and we're currently about 2 years into that, and got another really strong year ahead of us on that journey. For those that don't know, the Australian Computer Society is the preeminent membership society for Australian IT professionals. We have some 40,000 members, and a lot of the product offerings that we have a focus around B2B and B2C. Thank you.
That's fine. Thanks, Rich. And over to you, Gabby.
Yeah, thanks, Toby. So I work for Salesforce New Zealand in the mid-market commercial space, and the territory that I focus on, the industry that I focus on, is retail and consumer goods. I started my career in government and looking at data analytics projects for governments, but then really moved to the commercial side, looking at FMCG, how people shop categories and shopper analytics, and then more for the last 5 years at Salesforce, looking at how consumer goods companies can become more effective and efficient in the way that they operate.
Awesome. Thanks, Gabs. Thanks you so much, everybody, for your time today. And Rich, let's kick things off. Looking at the Australian B2B landscape, what are some of the trends or changes that have caught your attention? Like particularly, considered the impacts of the pandemic and the recent economic downturn. What are you seeing?
Sure. So as part of our transformation, we're actually restructuring the way that the business operates and bringing in that real strong e-commerce, B2B, B2C sort of play. I'm not suggesting that that's not there at the moment, but it's a good opportunity to make changes based on what we've seen coming out of COVID. And I think really a couple of key points. The B2B consumer, much like the B2C consumer, now expects everything always on 24/7. Our 24/7 lifestyle is bleeding right into business. They don't seem to care about the B2B purchase being historically a lot more complex than a B2C. They just want what they want right now. So a couple of key things. Omnichannel, it's now mandatory. So I think pre-COVID, it was something that everyone tiptoed around. But really that omni-channel experience where we're talking about in-person, remote, and digital self-service is really what we're seeing in the B2B space. Mm-hmm. User experience is clearly everything as well. So the best user experience anywhere instantly becomes the minimum expectation everywhere. when people are using really slick B2C platforms, they have the minimum expectation that they're going to get the same experience when they're at work. So we can no longer support a janky purchase path and poor marketing in a disjointed business. We really need to get to shore up those areas. Otherwise, people will just go elsewhere.
Yeah, very true. Gabby, over in New Zealand, how have you guys been dealing with the trials of the pandemic and so forth?
Yeah, well, look, certainly the pandemic kind of feels like a bit of a lifetime ago now, right? But you know, imagine if it did sort of happen 20 years ago, we wouldn't have had the tech to have had the response that we did. And for some companies, you know, it may as well have been 20 years ago, and it showed up a real lack of readiness. You know, that affected some people a lot more than others, but it really dragged those leggers online. And I think initially, while everyone was questioning, are we going to be locked down for 6 weeks? We're going to come out, everything's going to go back to normal. We don't really need to do anything. And, you know, we saw a lot of skunk works kind of come out as sort of band-aids to that problem. But you know, what it showed us is while the pandemic didn't last, the change in behavior lasted. And, you know, to echo what Rich has said, the experience that consumers have online, people take that into their workplace, and that's exactly what they're, you know, what they're expecting. In terms of our customers, you know, we saw maybe acceleration of plans that were already in place to, you know, to go direct to consumer, but a real acceleration in that happening. And some temporary sort of innovation, you know, for example, New World or Foodstuffs, they use their their B2B platform to fulfill orders that they were coming in through that end consumer, and they were able to do that within 10 days. So that's all about having that kind of platform in place that enables you to, you know, to pivot quickly. But look, you know, all of those businesses, they look for more sort of permanent solutions afterwards. In terms of uniqueness to what happened to New Zealand, you know, we're really at the end of the world, and we pulled up the drawbridge. But that also meant that we had a lot of supply chain issues. So while you were giving people a great experience online, you know, the ability for those goods to actually enter the country meant that you had to really look at how your service was going to support that. So yeah, so that was how the pandemic sort of played out. In terms of what we're facing now with the economic downturn, it's really all about businesses being sustainable and you know, not necessarily in the climate change sense, but in the sense of how can I keep competitive pricing but maintain my margins so that my business is sustainable. And I think, you know, for us, the answer is AI and automation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's sort of some of these things in business are kind of fundamental to any organization that wants to be the top of their game. But it feels like some of these things have to happen before folks get their, into gear to do this sort of stuff, which is a bit unfortunate in the sense of like getting it done now, but that's the way it works. That's the way it rolls. Thanks for that one, Gab. And actually, I might stay with you on this next question. If we talk about the technology, given its pivotal role, can you share some of the promising opportunities businesses can explore today? Specifically, how can business harness some of these streamlined operations, stimulate growth, and boost that customer experience?
Yeah, so I mean, this has come at quite an opportune moment. At the moment, we have our Connections conference happening over in Chicago, and this is where we typically launch new products to the market that that are for our consumer goods products and really for our marketing and our commerce. And what we released overnight was a whole new range of ChatGPT and how we're going to incorporate that into our commerce platforms, our sales platforms, and into marketing. And there's some really exciting innovation, and it's two things. It's one of them is, how much money is it going to save you on that back end? So for example, one of the features is product description. So you add a new product to your commerce website. It is able to go out to trusted sources, to scrape all of that information, come back with a product description. The person who's working your back end is able to edit that, and very quickly be able to publish that out and take credit for it. So that's a massive time savings that you're going to get through that. So that's one, is that cost reduction. So using ChatGPT to really kind of anticipate what's going to happen next and provide for it. And if we look at things like chatbots, before you had to think about what are they going to ask? What are they going to ask? And then how are we going to get that information? And then we need to also send them down a decision path. Now, we don't need to do that anymore, because we can use natural language that can go into your customer 360. It can pull the relevant data and conversationally answer these questions without you as a business having to anticipate it all.
Yeah. Rich, have you got some thoughts to add there?
Yeah, look, no conversation is complete these days without a conversation around generative AI. Look, we've certainly are exploring it within our own organisation, just building on what Gabby touched on around the sales and marketing side of things. For instance, there's enormous value in the use of AI and general automation in those areas. In one of the products that we offer, skills assessment, where we're toying with generative AI or the precursors for ChatGPT, OpenAI, around using or grabbing the natural language from a resume or a job description and being able to assess skills based on that. So really as an automation tool in that area. The challenge we have at the moment, however, is the challenge around governance of AI. So we're kind of in a bit of a holding pattern at this point, and using generative AI where we've not got any form of membership data or customer data in it, and really back to the basics, writing content for us while we wait for that this funky technology come to bear. And then I think we'll be boots in on that one, and there's huge value in that area.
Yeah, I think it's one of these things where just starting small, getting used to it, seeing where things are playing. I know with my team, I'm asking where are you using it today? What are you thinking about today on little things that is just going to, add to the productivity of the day, but also what are some of those things that we could extend what we're doing right now? We've been playing a bit with RPA, robotic process automation, for a while. Actually, been playing with it for a while now, and for me, it feels like this is like the next level. But obviously, it's another level. But you can't stick your head in the sand, and you got to kind of crack on. We've got to make sure we keep an eye on security and all the rest of it. But it's in some ways kind of exciting, because I'm optimistic it's going to take out a lot of the work we don't want to do, right? And shouldn't have to do, and get back to proper human interactions and so forth. But good stuff. Okay, so we're going good for time on this webinar. Thank you very much so far. This is great. We're going to switch gears again, Rich, and I'm going to divert this question to you about your perspective on some of the guiding principles B2B organizations should think about when they're embarking on a digital transformation. It's kind of the key elements that you see that should be a focus when you want to kind of succeed in that endeavor.
Yeah, interesting question there, Toby. And I think getting back to basics is important. Digital transformation seems to be a really strong buzzword in the community at the moment, and really, unless you're focusing on the whole of organization, people, process, and tech, it is just a digital transformation. You're just changing some technology. I think from a guiding principle perspective, we need to, so that might be the approach that you want to take, but from a guiding principle approach, the value in transformation is at the people and the process layer rather than the technology. I've suggested internally that the technology is the easy bit and the people and the process is quite difficult. And I think it is, right? So if you focus on your business processes and the structures and the people in your organization, you can gain heaps of operational efficiencies in that area. Typically, your number one cost to do business is your upfront labor costs. So being able to streamline, automate, bring in generative AI in the future, there's enormous value in reducing the cost there. And then, of course, that then gives you the opportunity to bring in a simplified technology stack. So, I mean, from a measure of success perspective in my internal organization, when I'm gone, I'd love my predecessors to only have to scan through 2 or 3 lines of code rather than 2,000 to 3,000 lines of code, because we have a really simplified technology stack. Again, the efficiencies in the process and the people.
Yeah, no, makes sense. How much of, I'm going a bit off piste here, sorry. How much of this, you know, is like you got to walk the path to really, you know, have, you know, experience until you actually set sail off the dock and do that sailing in the ocean? Do you really kind of learn how to do this sort of stuff, as opposed to, hey, here's some golden rules, people, process, tech, you know, that makes sense, but until you actually do it.
Yeah, look, this is transformation is a long and painful journey. If you think about when you build a house, for example, you're halfway through building the house and thinking, why on earth did I start this? And I think digital transformation or organizational transformation is much like that. There's a lot of pressure from within the organization to do things faster, or historically, it costs a lot of money. So you need strong support right across your leadership team and your boards or your management committees or whatever. And I guess the people journey is quite important. A lot of what you do in transformation upsets the way that people operate. So that moving my cheese concept, people get a little bit upset when you move their cheese. So you've got to take that into consideration when you're actively transforming a business unit, that there is a plan for those people at the end of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Gab, in your experience too, what you've seen with organizations that actually, you know, nail it and those that sort of have challenges, what's your experience in that?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the technology is one thing, but the right partner to implement is another. And I think, you know, like touching on what Richard said, the understanding where that value is, you know, because you need to be able to point to that value, because you need to be able to measure it afterwards. But that's really how you're going to get this across the line, is really being able to draw a direct line between, we're going to do this and this is what it's going to generate. But also taking into account what Rich said, that same line's got to be drawn with the people that come aboard. You know, this is how we do things now. This is what we don't like about it. This is how we're going to do things in the future, and this is what we're excited about that. And so those two things need to happen in order to get a business on board. And then it's also really ensuring that you're looking outward and you're saying, what do your customers actually want? What are their experience? And you know, you shouldn't have to train your customers on how to use your self-service digital engagement. It should be obvious, you know. And so really understanding what that experience is and testing for that and involving some of your customers in that process of design thinking. I think that is, you know, that's how you really get that great result. So I think that's probably about where I see the biggest disconnect is when all of the parties aren't working in unison, aren't aligned, and aren't leaning into each other's skill sets, you know, and really taking that advice that you know, a vendor will see things from the technology perspective, the implementation partner will see things from, you know, where they've experienced things before, and you should bring that in and not kind of hold it at arm's length, because that's when I see things fail.
Yeah, it's defining the guiding principles up front, who's owning what, who's accountable for what, and leveraging, people's skill sets for that task and so forth. Is critical. What we see out there, it's not easy, absolutely, but so sort of digging a bit deeper here, Rich, might throw back to yourself on this, on some of the golden rules businesses should consider and be aware of. And I think the measurement side of things that you mentioned there too before, Gab, is kind of critical, like that before and after effect. But yeah, from ACS perspective, moving from that B2B to, is that aspect?
Look, I think Gabby summed up an area that's quite passionate in my way of thinking, is that strong collaborative team is absolutely critical. You need the DNA from all parts of business within that team as well. Having a technology architect sitting with a business process expert that's sitting with the person that works on the coalface on a daily basis, including your customer. So bringing your customer in on that journey. Certainly in a bunch of areas that we've been working on at the moment, we've invited our customers in to show them through how it operates, both front end and back end, as well as the front end and back end for the planned future. And that builds a lot of support and momentum within the organization. But I guess from a pitfalls perspective, back to some of the areas that I touched on briefly, you need to have full board and exec support. Any form of digital transformation, whether it's whole of organization or rebuilding a website or an e-com platform, it's going to be a journey. It's always going to take twice as long as you want it to. You're going to agitate everyone or almost everyone within the organization while you're making change. You're typically within an environment, it's not something, digital transformation is not something that you do as part and parcel of your day. So you need strong partnerships with third-party organizations that do digital transformation for a living, so running projects for a living. I guess your sponsor needs to understand that it's going to be a costly, painful journey, and they need to be on board the entire time. And finally, the friction of change. I saw a really cool quote that you need friction to create traction the other day, and I think that that really holds true when you're running a large-scale transformation and you're changing the way people work. You do need to create friction to get that traction. People are well seated in their roles. They've got a really strong understanding of the way that they work, and that's quite powerful for people. When you're transforming that, you're changing the way that they work, and that creates friction, but it also gets traction too.
Yeah, that's when you mentioned it's going to take a bit longer, it's going to cost more, but it reminded me of backpacking, where it was like, take twice as much money and half as much clothes. Because the things that you think you need going into this is not necessarily what it takes, right, to get stuff done. I know we've jumped around a little bit here about some of the things on a transformation, but Gab, did you want to share a little bit more about from your perspectives the tightrope, I guess, that folks walk between it's a great product and everything, and then the aspect of the people side of it that it needs to be taken into account, because we live and breathe people, process, tech. We know we've got the best tech, and we partner with the best tech on the planet. But that tightrope between the two and customer experience and so forth, what are you seeing out there as well that could be something that might avoid some of the pitfalls that has happened?
Yeah, well, that's the value of consulting, so saying I want a system to do X, Y, and Z is not really necessarily solving the problem. So asking the question, what are you trying to achieve? What do you want to get out of this? What is your utopia? And then we'll tell you how the system will do X, Y, and Z to achieve that. And so I think that that's trusting that if we understand the use case, then we can give you the best solution. Because for the most part, it could probably do any of the things you've asked it to do. But like Rich said, you don't want to. Digital transformation is not about taking what you do now and putting it in a new digital environment and saying, look, we've done it. It's about saying how do we achieve the goals? How do we roll out our strategies? And how do we do this using this technology, and what is new in that technology? So I think, again, it's about having that really good collaborative partnership where you understand that everyone in there is after success. No one in that partnership is after failure. And so the more honest and open and collaborative you can be, the better the result you're going to get for it.
Yeah, 100%. Rich, anything to add to that from your perspective?
No, look, I think we've summed that up there quite well.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So look, setting our sights on the horizon, the actions that we can take now to stay a step ahead, and what are those industry trailblazers doing differently that truly distinguishes them against the rest? Have you guys? I'll start with you, Rich, on this one. What are you seeing out there in that respect?
Let's roll back to generative AI because it's this is absolutely the future in all areas of organisation. One of the I'll expand a little bit on what we're doing in the area. So our B2B channels around skills assessment, we're currently performing this via a manual process. So you'll buy a product off us, which is called a skill assessment. Typically, a CIO will purchase this product for us from us to skill assess their entire team, to find out where there's strengths and weaknesses within the team, to aid promotion or skill development. Currently, that's a really manual process, and the ability to be able to deliver this product at scale is, of course, limited by the amount of people that we have that are experts in this field. Generative AI enables us to scale really, really quickly in that area and to almost build that as a B2C or a typical B2C product, a package, a boxed solution. Pulling that natural language, or the ability to pull that natural language from a resume, a job description, or even an advertisement on Seek, and then transposing that over other forms of data using a foundational framework, gives us the ability to really get stuck into or to even take part of the human out of it. So humans might miss something, generative AI generally doesn't. So that, I think that is the future for a lot of organizations. We can dive into the areas of sales and marketing as well. So there's a lot of value in that. Just writing type for marketing campaigns. Why spend the time writing it yourself when it's so easy to get something else to do that for you? So there's definitely going to be quite a lot of value in that. I think outside of generative AI, there's some interesting things happening in the market from an IT perspective in general. I'm actually seeing a lot of organizations post-COVID starting to move out of cloud. And I think that's because we're starting to get a lot more cost conscious as interest rates rise, and the heyday that we had pre-COVID is starting to move away. A lot of people are getting a lot more cost sensitive. So I think that works probably the opposite to the requirement for speed. Are we going back to the era where we need to stop and build a server out before we can do something? Means we can't get to market quicker. So it'd be interesting to see where that goes as well.
It is a bit of an interesting one. In the sense of what was quick and solid and reliable at one point, and then cloud comes along, and then a bit of a loop in some ways in some of this tech. But no doubt things are moving fast, and I think the key takeaway with a lot of the stuff that we're talking about is the ability to pivot, or the ability to kind of go, have I got also know about all of this sort of stuff? Who do I partner with? Who I know that, the likes of Salesforce and everyone going, they're already thinking about stuff that I need to be thinking about, but have got it, in the roadmap and all that sort of stuff, because who knows what's around the corner? And it's the things that we don't even expect that, like, I remember a webinar some time ago was like, we need to think about what's the next Uber, or the thing that's going to disrupt. The things that disrupt are the ones that you don't even see coming. It's a classic, blindside, so to speak. But it feels like these technologies, or the generative AI, is moving super fast. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I'm an optimist, and it's going to work out just fine. But because you can't build a building out there with generative AI, but you can certainly get more accurate and streamline a whole bunch of stuff that goes along the way, to do that. Gabrielle, just over to you for your thoughts about, the horizon and some of the things that folks can do to stay a step ahead.
Well, I can certainly tell you, I'm not talking to anyone about on-premise solutions.
Yep. I did find that one quite weird, actually. Maybe it's the speed. Speed comes at a cost, and cost sensitivity is starting to drive downward pressure on some of these sorts of things. And it does seem to be a growing trend. A lot of the big tech companies and big organizations are currently going down that path.
Mm.
As again, I'm not saying this, but I might be ring fencing my conversations to those people interested in cloud and the benefits of that. For example, if you have something on premise in New Zealand, you have an earthquake, you've got to have your backup somewhere else. How's that all going to work? So there's some fragility, of course, to getting everything from the internet. We're seeing the likes of Elon Musk kind of trying to solve that problem for us. In terms of AI and things like that, the security, I guess, is that's one of the aspects. Is everyone's worried about their security, and that really comes down to ensuring that you understand that the vendor and what their protocols, what their information is around that, and that there's a high level of trust that you have, that your data is secure. In terms of AI, that's really where our trailblazers are going, and they're trailblazers because they're ready for it. I think it was 24 months it took for the handset, the smartphone handset that Apple's first launched to globalize itself and get adoption around the world. AI, I think, is going to be just as fast, just as quick. The thing about it is it's going to provide the companies that have set themselves up for success for this, it is going to provide them a very, very quick way to be able to scale, to be able to meet some of the pressures that are happening at the moment in terms of inflation, wage inflation, every part of their supply chain adding cost to it. So, being able to reduce that, but being able to also be sleeker and smarter in the way that you do business. So, if you're not ready for AI, that's the first thing you should be thinking about, is like, how do I match my customer's identity? How do I know who they are across all of my systems, plus, external systems as well? How can I build a full picture of this customer and interact with them with what they want, at the time that they want? And the ability to operationalize this is, is really what GPT and AI is giving us. So, so that's why I say our trailblazers are doing. In saying that, there's always smaller leaps that you can take into things. One of the recent announcements we have is a reorder portal. So this is like a tiny baby step into commerce. So if you can imagine, you're a salesperson, you've got your sales portal open, notification comes up that the product that you sell needs to be restocked in these stores. you're able to send out a link to that customer that automatically generates their own individualized reorder portal, and they can adjust their adjust their volumes and press order now, and that's all done. So that's a baby step into commerce, and particularly maybe good for those smaller businesses, or those ones that might find it a little bit difficult to turn the steam train around.
Yeah, it is. I think all of this sort of stuff is, it doesn't matter what size business you are, right? And we work with a wide range of size of businesses, and some of that stuff that needs to happen is small, small bits and pieces, small incremental change. Obviously with a vision of North Star or guiding what principles and everything like that, and from the top down too, that everybody's got to be on board to this. But little nuggets of movement and nudges we see is really powerful, and not having your head in the sand, right? Because the reality is, winter's coming or whatever, there's something around the corner. That's life. Talk to people, get that information. Really, I find as well, there's a lot of headlines that's clickbait and so forth, and people freaking out losing jobs. But I don't know anyone that I've ever worked with that's found an automation and found a way of doing something more efficiently has ever lost their job or it's been in, jeopardy. It's like, get that person on the next thing, right? Let's look at this and factor it in. I know that's it's definitely, what we see here in CloudWorks in the organization ourselves. So we're going pretty good for time, and a few questions are coming through. I just want to take a moment to remind folks to register for the other webinars that we've got on this series, this 4-part series. So make sure you jump on that and register, get it on demand, get it any which way you want these days. There's only 2 people on this call, but I'm joking, there's more. There's yeah, consume it as you want. So we've got a few more minutes before we go to questions, but so put this one back to you, Gab, just as we wrap up and work out these sort of takeaways. Well, yeah, what are I guess the nuggets, the takeaways that you would want to leave with this audience? 1 or 2 things that you think is really, keep that in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the first is that start with the end in mind. So have an idea where you're going, but probably be prepared to never actually finish. And that's not a bad thing. It's just that it's you don't sort of draw a line in the sand and say, well, we've done that, we'll come back in 10 years. Everything around us is evolving. You need to stay up with that change. But you also need to move forward. You can't paralyze yourself in a sort of lack of decisions. Again, engaging with those trusted advisors that everyone knows their piece of the puzzle and are really leaning in to that discovery process, and also measure your success, because at the end of the day, when you go back to your business and say, hey, we did this, you gave us a whole heap of money to do this, and now we want to do this, you're going to need to be able to say, and this is what we got. This is what we got from it. And it gives also the people in the business a massive sense of pride. And you're right, Toby, it's not the sort of thing that you get fired for. It's the sort of thing that you get stood up on a pedestal for. This team worked on this. They've achieved this. Isn't that great? Now we've got confidence they're going to go off and do this other thing. So really making sure you understand, how you're going to measure that success, and that you actually do it through that process.
Yeah, awesome. That's great. Richard, your
war stories from a CIO. I think really building on Gabby's comments there, really around I think the North Star, if COVID and generative AI have taught us anything, is you can't plan your future. It'll be planned for you, and having a goal to reach is important, but you will need those baby steps to get there. I think from a transformation perspective, the number one thing that we realised, and I don't think we realised the importance at the time, is partnering with strong organisations. My team do a fantastic job at BAU and running projects, but to lead and drive a transformation program is completely different. You need to scale and work at a different level and a different pace. And having a partner that comes in and brings their DNA from other organizations that have led transformation at ground zero gives you the ability to not only use the best minds within your organization to design what that North Star looks like, but you grab the DNA from your third parties that have worked across other large, medium, small organizations to add their own individual contribution into what that North Star might be. And we then evolve accordingly. There's some really cool things happening within our organization, and I'd suggest that if we sat there and planned out what that was going to look like when we started transformation 2 years ago, we're nowhere near that at this point. That aside, I think I've me, Toby, I always hark on about people, process, and technology, and doing it in that order. It is a rather naff term, but it is critically important. You realise the value in the people and the process, and the technology is the enabler to get you there a little bit quicker.
Just on a side note, if someone told you that 15, 20 years ago, would you be like, yeah, that, or is it a nugget somewhere, or did you get told that 20 years ago?
Look, I might have done, right? So, I mean, if you go into my history, architecture of large systems and processes, large computer systems and whatnot, and I think in the 90s and the early noughties, it was all around building some cool tech and then forcing organizations and people to work around that technology. And you end up with hyper complex systems that even today organizations are struggling to sort of untangle. So by focusing on the people in the process, again, you get the simplified, or you unlock the value of the function that you're trying to perform, and just getting tech to enable and sort of get you to the finish line with it.
Yeah, Gab, I love that. The reality is things never end, right? Like it's a constant in a good way, because just our humans, right? The cells keep reproducing and you keep growing, and actually comfort and growth don't really coexist, because it takes a bit of pain, a bit of change and all that sort of stuff. But in a good way, there's things that gives you that incremental change. It's constantly moving and so forth. And that's exciting. But look, hey, I just want to thank you guys, Rich, Gabby, awesome insight today. I really appreciate your viewpoints. It's incredibly invaluable. We've got some questions coming through a little bit ahead of time, but I will just kind of look here where we got one coming from for you, Gab. A question: where do you get your information on trends in B2B? Who are the industry experts you follow?
Yeah, so I don't necessarily sort of know any individuals, but the typical kind of McKinsey reports, the PwC. Obviously, we have some great industry leaders within our business as well. Imran Khan, who is our regional head of consumer goods industry, who stays very well connected. We have our own surveys where we go out to thousands of customers every year, and we ask them various questions about their experience with Salesforce, but they're also their experience, in the industry, and so we record those results. So it's really just a mixture of things coming in, more local. You're looking to sort of FMCG magazine and supermarket news and all of those kind of local online content providers that give you a bit of a sense for things that are maybe different or more local. Like like I said again, that issue that we had with supply chain. There was a uniqueness to New Zealand because the shipping routes got rerouted to more profitable areas, or ships couldn't come in because our resources at the ports couldn't handle them, so they had to leave again to continue on their journey. So all of of those kind of local things you can keep up with more local publications. But generally, you know, there's an element of a homogenized world where like we're all kind of you know, great big mountain pot now, and you know, what we're seeing happening in Europe or North America is the same things that are playing out in New Zealand, albeit sometimes at a slightly slower rate.
Yep. No, good stuff. Rich, I think I've got a quick question here for you. What benefits are you seeing so far with your digital transformation? In 25 words or less. No, actually, that was a joke. That was
less. All right. I'll say the words. You've got to count them then, Toby. I think what we found interesting in our organisation is transformation has become a platform for innovation. And I think that might be a little bit unique to our organisation. We've got a lot of tech nerds that sit within our organisation, and they've all got views on how things work. And they've had an unheard voice for a long time. So by providing that transformation platform, the knowing that we're doing unique things, we're bringing in the DNA and the understanding from other people to build platforms. People are injecting their views on ideas and whatnot. And I think it's almost like a Borg collective, right? So we've got to bring sci-fi into it. Everyone's unique part of the solution brings that overall solution.
Yeah. I think I got another question here for you, Richard. As a business buyer, any brands that are really are doing it really well that you've noticed?
As a buyer, a lot of my purchase is really around the B2B space, and typically the traditional in-person or remote, so less around that full omni-channel experience of digital purchase. Without naming too many names, I'll touch on it briefly. DocuSign are doing a really good job. 8x8 are also doing it. 8x8, which is a contact center platform, they're also doing a really good job in that area as well. Mm-hmm. And of course, CloudWorks, right? So
that wasn't set up. No.
Not at all.
No, awesome. There's actually another question that was to me. You sell consulting services to businesses. How do you stay in touch with their needs and wants and buyers? So yeah, for us, again, to Gabby, to your point of the information that's out there and staying up to date with what's going on in certain industries. And as we've grown, the domain expertise gets deeper and deeper, and you kind of, you get what's going on. A while ago, there was the Cooper review in superannuation, and really, if you knew what was going on there, it really helped kind of cut to the chase of like, this is what's got to happen right now. And I think part of that is also coupled with active listening and really, really listening to what is going on with that organization, like right now. And not thinking, hey, we know best and just jam this, do this, and all the rest of it. It's really understanding where folks' situations are right now to take into account to what needs to happen right now. So, because it's all good and well to kind of go, yep, there's that nirvana state, we want to get there. But right now, we're a business, we've just bought another business or been acquired, or we've gone through some challenges in our own business, and all of that sort of stuff coupled together. And as well, so those things, and the folks that we've got actually working here is a beautiful mix of folks who've been on the customer side and now in consulting services, because again, having walked in those shoes, having sort of experienced one of our great heads of delivery here, constantly saying, what's going on behind the screens, like the people behind the eyeballs behind the screens, right? What have they got to do, their day-to-day, how they experiencing, and that, Rich, you talked about before, what people expect and the blurred lines between B2B and B2C. It's all changed, and everyone has got to, whether you're in a procurement division or you're on, the iconic buying some pants, you kind of, you're about that experience and how seamless it is, how much of a pain in the neck it is, or whatever. So, and that's that's a challenge we see day to day from folks in small business, which are trying to keep up with that. And we, helping them sort of leverage the technology to do that and lend from other industries is kind of critical. So I think I'm just looking to see if we've got any more questions in the chat panel on the side. If anyone's got any more, throw them in now. We're going to be wrapping up any second now, but I think I think we've covered everything there. Also, again, please register for the next series. There's lots of other customers and insights from people who have, seen it all, done it all. I really want to thank you guys again for your time, Rich and Gab. Really, really appreciate that. It's been fantastic. So with that, we will close out the session, and here's a QR code if you want to know more. But thank you very much, everybody, for attending.